What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell. In this episode, we are going to celebrate, discuss the NFL Pro Bowl roster was released. So, we're going to talk about your Baltimore Ravens and their participation in it. Go over if there's any snubs, any surprises, and all that fun stuff. But before we do, do us a favor. Take a second, hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and click the notification bell so we can keep you up to date on all your Ravens news. But Jimmy, where should we start when it comes to this year's Pro Bowl roster?
Well, while I talk to myself on mute, before we really quickly, before we talk about the Pro Bowl roster, I got to talk about your organization forming a Pro Bowl roster, and that is through LinkedIn Jobs. Really simply, if you're looking to hire anyone, if you're a recruiter yourself, our partner and the one that makes this episode possible, LinkedInjobs.com. Use the promo code 410 to list your job posting for free on the biggest job recruiting network with what I consider to be the most professionals. So go check it out. But speaking of the NFL Pro Bowl, now that you've already enlisted LinkedIn to form your Pro Bowl roster of employees, yep. The Pro Bowl, the Pro Bowl itself, your question was, who did we have make the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, well, where should we start when discussing
I think we should start. Let's start with the Ravens and talk about who made it from the Baltimore Ravens. I think there's some interesting facts along with some snubs, along with some surprises. Yeah. So you have the list in front of you, don't you, Glenn?
I do.
Okay, awesome. So who made it from the Baltimore Ravens?
All right, so first and foremost, QB1, Lamar Jackson, made the Pro Bowl. So shout out to Lamar Jackson. Congratulations. Not his first, and I'm certain won't be his last. Yeah. Shout out to him. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the best tight end in football this year has been Mark Andrews, no doubt about it. So, of course, he makes the Pro Bowl and having a incredible season. Already over 1,000 yards. I'm hoping that he's an
All-Pro this year, not just the Pro Bowl.
And he deserves to be. So, absolutely expect him to be named there as well. And then the greatest of all time, Justin Tucker, no shocker here. The really only surprising thing is that he doesn't make it every single year.
Yeah.
And, people get bored. And also kickers do have career years here and there, but it's the motto of consistency that makes Justin Tucker the GOAT. Yep. And so he continues to reign as the top kicker of all time. And so, congratulations to him. And then, of course, Pat Ricard, who is maybe the most underrated player and maybe the best athlete that nobody ever talks about, being a 310-pound fullback who can block anyone from a safety to a defensive tackle, yet can show hands out of the backfield, and no corner wants to see that man in the flat in the open field and have to take that horse down. So Pat Ricard, as long as he's a Baltimore Raven and healthy, he will continue to be the fullback representative for the AFC side.
Can I ask you a quick question before we move on? Is it safe to say that he's the best fullback we've ever had as a Baltimore Ravens organization? Is it safe to say that yet?
I think it is.
I'm tired of the Kyle Juszczyk is the best fullback. He's just
he might be the most skilled.
Maybe.
Because you consider when he was here, he had the best hands on our team when he was here.
Yes, but Pat can assimilate like a lot of what he does. Not obviously the same, but like you said, Pat is massive. He's like 1.5 times the size.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you need. If I had one guy that I needed to lead me through the hole in the A gap, look, Kyle Juszczyk wouldn't be low on the list, but sure. Pat Ricard's number one by a good margin because he's 310 pounds and can run like a deer.
And there's no tight end in that scenario you would take over Patrick Ricard, right? Not a single one, I'm assuming.
No.
But there's probably a few tight ends you'd take over Kyle Juszczyk in that scenario.
Yeah. But, I mean, again, Kyle Juszczyk was the NFC's representative fullback, very talented, and can be used in a receiving role. I just hate that he gets slotted into, like, he's the best fullback in the NFL. I don't think that's fair. I think Patrick Ricard is. Obviously, I'm biased. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, love me some Pat Ricard. And then, finally, the last representative for the Baltimore Ravens is return specialist / wide receiver Devin Duvernay. Shout out to Devin. All the hard work he's put in. He mentioned it in response to this that this is what the hard work is put in for, is to be hopefully recognized by your peers and by everyone as being good at your job. And he certainly has been this year. He's been the best return man in all of football, and it hasn't been that close. So congratulations to Devin Duvernay.
Shout
but
out
where
to
should
all of
we?
them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love our Ravens.
Absolutely. And I just want to clarify one thing. You mentioned it, but for folks that are questioning, I just want to double down. Devin Duvernay made it as a special teamer. It's very easy to tell why. He's the best returner in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, punting and kickoff.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about Mr. Devin Duvernay, because right now he leads the league in both punt return total yards and punt return average. He also is fourth in total return yards, which includes 541 yards and kick returns. He's got the most punt returns of 20-plus yards in the NFL with 6, which is also a single-season franchise record for the Baltimore Ravens. So when you look at all the incredible return specialists in the history of the Ravens, I mean, you could stack that up against any team.
My favorite Raven of all time, Jermaine Lewis, was a great returner.
There you go. Jacoby Jones, I think, was pretty damn special himself.
Yep.
So, you could really put up those guys against any team and their history. And the fact of the matter is Devin Duvernay has done more big returns than anybody in our history. So shout out to Devin Duvernay. I mean, got to give him credit. But again, let's not compare him to Hollywood, because they're two different roles here. But let's get into. Do you want to talk snubs? Do you want to talk?
Well, let's. You want to go snubs or surprises? It's up to you.
Let's start with surprises then, because I think the biggest one on the list that has a lot of people talking is Lamar Jackson, and mainly that's because he's missed some games and he's had some turnover issues, right? I mean, those are the two things that people are pointing to when saying that he may have not deserved this as much as someone else who could have. And of course, the person they're talking about is Josh Allen. I mean, that's the comparison. So what do you have as far as making a case for either of these guys?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say off the jump, because this is what I've been hearing, is that, Ravens flock runs deep. The Lamar Jackson love runs deep. That's how he got in, this, that, and the other. Okay. But the way that the voting is formatted, the fan vote is only a portion, right?
Yeah.
That's why, Yao Ming didn't make an NBA All-Star game every year when he had over 1 billion votes multiple times. Like over 1 billion. But he made the All-Star team every time, because there's also a coach and player portion of that. And so the way actually Lamar Jackson got in was not due to the fan voting, was due to the other portions. So I think that that's interesting and that's telling.
Mm-hmm.
So the case, and like you said, Glenn, the hard part is that even if Lamar played like he has been playing all year, I think, like, even with the turnover issues and the way he's been performing, with just simply health and not missing a few games, I think he's a shoo-in. But this is why I understand why Bills Mafia is upset, and they have a case. But this is what I want to say about Lamar. I think that every team has had stinkers this year. Look, Josh Allen lost to the Jaguars. Like, say what you want about the Ravens, but the Jaguars are the worst team in the NFL. Like, they might be worse than the Texans and the Lions.
Oh, they just got destroyed by the Texans.
Right. So with that said, I think what they go to are the moments, the things that Lamar Jackson has done this year in moments on national television, the comebacks, the things that only he can do. Like, I think that's why it's hard to simply quantify and compare stats, because Lamar has just done things that other guys can't do. Not saying that Josh Allen isn't incredibly capable, but Lamar Jackson has come back from some serious deficits, has put up some numbers as a passing yard, has made some big plays and big moments. That's my case for Lamar. That's the only thing I can lean on right now. And then if you compare that to the struggles that they've had from a health standpoint and where his team is at, a lot of that falls squarely on Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
So I think that, to me, is the case toward Lamar.
Yeah, and I think that last part you just mentioned is a big factor that I think a lot of fans will overlook, especially if you're a fan of the Bills and Josh Allen, is that Josh Allen's doing this with an all-pro Stephon Diggs every game on the outside. He's doing this with Cole Beasley, who's arguably the best slot receiver in the league when he's out there, and he's been out there for almost every game this year. He's got Emmanuel Sanders. He's got Dawson, or is it Dawson or Dalton? I think it's Dawson. But he's got players around him and he hasn't had this mass exodus. He hadn't had this horrible rash of injuries where he loses his entire, offensive line, his entire backfield. And I think that's the difference. But if I was a Josh Allen fan, here's what I would say. I would say Josh Allen has 31 touchdown passes and 12 interceptions. Lamar Jackson has 16 touchdown passes and 13 interceptions. So he's got one more interception and half the touchdowns. Like, if you're a Josh Allen fan, you go, wait a minute, our guy has double the touchdowns and less interceptions, and then people may say, well, let's look at the rushing numbers because certainly Lamar has him beat there. Well, Lamar does have him beat in yardage, but Josh Allen has double the rushing touchdowns of Lamar Jackson.
And it's not a crazy margin, right? I think it's like less than 200 yards.
It's less than 200 yards. Yeah, less than 200 yards in rushing yards, but 4 touchdowns to Lamar's 2 touchdowns on the ground. So I think if you're, I think you got a reasonable gripe here if you're a Buffalo fan. I mean, I think that's the one where I would feel, if I was Josh Allen, I would feel like, you know what? I feel a little snubbed here.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with you on that, Glenn. It's difficult too. You compiled a solid case. I think once again the hard thing is that sometimes what Lamar does is just non-quantifiable, right? Yeah. And because he's not traditional, he's not an in the box type quarterback. And Josh Allen in his own right isn't extremely traditional. Obviously, he can do a lot with his feet.
I'd say he's the second best dual threat quarterback in the league. I mean, Kyler Murray's up there certainly, but
I'd take Josh over Kyler.
I mean,
just me right now.
Josh Allen on the ground throughout his career has, he's got 29 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, an insane amount.
He
does it differently than him.
8 more than Lamar for his career.
Yeah, he definitely does it differently, more like a Cam Newton type style.
Yep, power back. Yep.
Right, absolutely. But yeah, it's really difficult. And of course, let's just mention the starter is Justin Herbert. I don't think there's any arguments there. And then the number 2 is Pat Mahomes.
Fine with that.
I don't know what you're going to say about that.
And I don't think any other quarterbacks in the AFC have a legitimate gripe other than Josh Allen. I think there's some guys that, Burrow's had a pretty decent year. Derek Carr started off hot, but has petered down the stretch here. But it's just Josh Allen that I think has a right to be a little upset.
So who are you putting in if you had to pick between the two? You're the deciding vote, Glenn. The fate of the universe lays on your.
I think I would have to go with. It's not easy, but I think I'd have to go with Josh Allen because of the fact that he's been healthy all year, because he has double the touchdowns and less turnovers. And,
now, would you calculate the strength of schedule and division?
Well, I think all that goes into the equation. When you get to beat up on the Jets 2 times a year. Obviously, the Patriots are surging, but the Dolphins, beat us, but they're not. They destroyed us, and
they're not a great football team.
No. I think overall the strength of the AFC North it outweighs that of the AFC East, but I still think that the case outweighs him when you think double touchdowns and far less.
At what point you can say, "What else do you want me to do?" Right, like
higher completion percentage. I mean, it's really.
Over 500 yards rushing, double the rushing. You're right. It's difficult.
And the fact that he's played in every game. I mean, you can't just omit the fact that Lamar's missed 2 full games and then 3/4 of a third game. So it's almost 3 full games where he hasn't participated.
I'm with you, but I wanna move on really quickly because I think a lot of Ravens fans are talking about the fact that Hollywood Brown didn't make the Pro Bowl roster. And just like we're doing with Lamar, let's look at who's in front of him. I just want to quickly name the receivers. You got Keenan Allen. You got Tyreek Hill. Stephon Diggs and Jamar Chase.
Yep.
All of them have over 1,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
All of them have more receptions.
Yep.
The only thing that they
actually, not all of them have more receptions.
Oh, okay.
Jamar Chase has less receptions, but more yards and nearly double the touchdowns.
Yeah. So I know that Hollywood has a few more touchdowns than a couple of guys in this category, but I think not like Josh Allen or unlike Josh Allen, there's really no case. While Hollywood Brown deserves an honorable mention and could be an alternate for an injury or something like that.
Yep. I
don't think there's a solid case for him to get in here. This is why honorable mentions exist, and I think that he's trending in the right direction. So knock on Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I just think it's part of a product of playing next to a guy that's probably going to be the All-Pro this year, Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is your true number one. Like, let's be honest, right? And I don't think it's any knock on Hollywood Brown at all.
No, I agree with you. I mean, if you just go down the list and you look at who's in front of him, Jamar Chase is the only one that has less receptions. He has 61 receptions, while Marquise is at 80. So he's got a decent amount less, but he's also got 10 touchdowns to Marquise's 6, and he's got 1,038 yards to Hollywood's 909. So he's got more
over
yards,
100 yards more,
more touchdowns on 20 less targets.
That's insane.
So you got to factor that in. Now Keenan Allen doing it a little bit differently, has more catches on more targets for more yards, but one less touchdown. So Marquise is certainly in this conversation. I don't think there's a doubt there. And there's a very, very good the alternate, because look, if you look around the AFC, who do you think has a shot at being in the Super Bowl, which would mean they're not going to participate in the Pro Bowl? And that's the Chiefs, right? So Tyreek Hill, the Bills, so Stephon Diggs, and then of course the Chargers and the Bengals are still very much alive and in it.
Yeah.
So there's still a very good shot that we're going to see Hollywood in Hawaii participate in the Pro Bowl with his best friend Lamar Jackson throwing him the ball. So I think that this is by far the best year we've seen from Hollywood, and it's a Pro Bowl caliber year. It's just there's a lot of great receivers in the AFC, and he's just been barely edged out for the honor.
Yeah, certainly. So no discredit towards Hollywood Brown. He's had a great season thus far, and we'll see how he ends up. But the other thing I just want to quickly mention here is that you'll notice we're not talking defense. I think you had an important note before the show started, Glenn. Why aren't we talking about the defense?
Yeah, it's incredible. The Ravens do not have a defensive representative in the Pro Bowl for the first time, and I was trying to find when the last time there wasn't a Pro Bowler on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm having a hard time finding it. I mean, you look at last year, Marlon, and I'm not going to name everyone, but just one each year. You got Marlon Humphrey last year, Marlon Humphrey in 2019, 2018, C.J. Mosley, which by the way is crazy to even think about. In 17, Mosley. In 16, it was Mosley. In 15, it was Doomerville. In 14, it was Mosley. So, I mean, you'd have to – I don't know if there's ever been a year where the Ravens didn't have a representative on the defensive side of the ball in the Pro Bowl. So that is just shocking to me. I mean, this is a team that is built on great defenses and has two of maybe the greatest defensive players to ever play the game, regardless of position. You might have the best linebacker. I would argue you have the best linebacker and you have the best safety of all time. Of course, played together, and then one of the very best pass rushers of all time in Suggs,
and even course, interior players in Hollywood or Haloti Ngata.
Yeah, who by the way made the Pro Bowl in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013. So this is not a team that's used to not having representatives on that side of the ball. It's kind of shocking, but yeah. I mean,
are there any players? Thoughts? I mean, I immediately went to, were there any players I started to think of that should have made it on the defensive side of the ball? And
yeah, it's hard to argue.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from a rating standpoint, Calais Campbell's played well, but he's had issues with health and he's not putting up the numbers. Like, he's had a great year from like pressures and disruption and things like that. He's not putting up the numbers that the Pro Bowl is going to get you in for. So yeah, I don't see it. Really unfortunate. We have a solid group. Just know, like, right now, we have some budding superstars.
I think Marlon might have had a shot.
Right.
But true. Again, not the turnovers like he was getting in the previous years, not the punch outs, not getting his hand on any picks.
Right. And the one time he tries to punch out tears his pec.
Tears his pec off. Yeah. I mean, and obviously Marcus Peters being banged up.
Yep.
And missing the whole year, that hurt their chances of getting a defensive representative. But yeah, shocking. But let's get back into the list and talk about some other things, because, you mentioned the fact that Project Pat, he's not, he's the great, but is there anyone on the around the league who could say, well, you know what, I would have liked to see, my guy at tight end? Like, do you think that Travis Kelce, do you have a problem with Travis Kelce being technically listed ahead of Mark Andrews? Do you think that's I have
a problem with it.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if that bothered
But
you or
in
if it
my
didn't
list,
matter.
it has Mark Andrews in front of
Oh.
Travis Kelce. I'm on.
Okay. So maybe
Yeah,
it's just this how this list is compiled, and it doesn't matter one or two. Okay.
Yeah, so because certainly Mark Andrews is the all pro. I think that's what he's shooting for now. And this is the reason is because no one, say whatever you want. No one has more pressure on him to produce every single game in and game out when it comes to the success of their team's offense than Mark Andrews at the tight end position.
It's pretty hard to argue. Especially, I mean, I think you would have had an argument in San Fran, but then you look at what Debo's done this year and the explosion of his role. Yeah, you can't really argue Kittle right now.
Nope.
Now, any bit of disappointment when you see that that daggone Big O made it for Kansas City?
I don't know. I think that you might be a little bit more disappointed than myself. I don't know what his stats are. Like, I don't.
It's hard to quantify stats for tackles.
I don't scour through a ton of left tackle stats, but I would also argue that there's a handful of guys that if based on my watching of the film this year, I would have probably taken over him. But I'm not upset about it. You know why, Glenn?
Why?
It means Kansas City Chiefs just got to pay him more. It's another thing he has coming to the negotiating table saying, look, I just made it as a Pro Bowl's left tackle. Pay me my money. Because we know this is what it was all really about.
Yeah.
Pay him his money.
He wanted his money, and that's all that matters. And that's fine. That's fine. He can go get his money. Big sloppy. Anyway, all right. Let me ask you one. Oh, let me just say one other thing that Ravens fans should be happy. The good news is Matt Judon made the Pro Bowl. And let me tell you why that's good news.
Oh, you're right. Because it
The
goes
Ravens
up a round, right?
Get a third-round pick in compensation rather than a fourth. So shout out to Matt Judon. Obviously, he was always a fan favorite here in Baltimore. A guy that we saw a ton addressing the media. He had a great, funny personality. Liked the guy. So I would have liked to see him do some of this stuff he's doing for the Patriots here, but maybe – the system fit just a little bit better for him. So shout out to Matt for getting the Ravens an additional third-round pick this year, which I'm sure the Ravens are thankful for because they're going to need all the picks they can get once they pay the great Lamar Jackson. So
yeah.
if there's nothing else, it's all I have to say about the matter.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, congratulations to the players that made it. Let's get some defensive players that make it next year. And at the end of the day, we don't want to see any of our players in the Pro Bowl because we'd love to be in the Super Bowl. Well, I'm not betting on that. That's what we're hoping for as Ravens fans.
Never know. Just get in.
That's right. Let us know if you guys think anyone was snubbed. Give us your case for Lamar Jackson. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.